All right. You can please make sure you add your pronoun if you're comfortable doing so. Mute your mic when you're not speaking. And I would love to see folks' faces. So if you're you can able to please make sure you add your pronoun. If you're able to keep your camera on, that'd be great. We're gonna practice both and thinking. I don't think that we're gonna be touching on anything too spectacularly controversial today, but we want to make sure that we're making room for everyone's ideas and voices. So if you're introduced to an idea that might not necessarily be or align directly with your own idea or your own current practices, that's okay. This is something new. Listen, learn, be open to new ideas. And we're going to practice step up, step back thinking. That's an idea that acknowledges that everyone has equal value in a discussion. Most of the time, white men speak first and loudest. It's often an unconscious behavior, and it's not intended to be offensive, but it is a reminder of systems of oppression that we've all internalized. So if you typically take a moment to reflect, if you're usually the first person to speak up, that might be a sign that you're not intentionally creating space for other people's ideas. So take a moment to reflect on that, and remember to listen first. All right. Also, I think that we have a small enough group that we might be able to get away with just speaking up if you have a question, but otherwise, if the room starts to fill up, use the chat or the raise hand little icon to ask a question. And if you have an idea about some training that you might want to provide to be part of the series, reach out to me at youth.director at Disc Northwest. We'd love to have you join us. All right. I am going to hand this over to Rocky. Rocky is the executive director of Ultimate Impact. Ultimate Impact is a really impressive group out of the Bay Area that's doing some great work about accessibility and teaching Ultimate in underrepresented areas. I'm going to let Rocky kind of talk about how he started and where he came from and what his background is. But I know I don't actually know Rocky that well, but I know a lot of people that work with Rocky very closely, and they think very highly of him. So we're happy he gets to be a part of it. Rocky,
Well,
I'm going to mute my mic, and it's you.
okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Jude, for first of all, for organizing all these events. I know similar to mine, everyone's life has had to adjust to the current new norm for now. And, it's really awesome to, one, get to meet new people. Desmond, it's been great chatting with you before the call, and just to continue to expand and stay connected to a sport that we all care a lot about. My name is Rocky Beach. I always have to start out, it is my real name. Everyone thinks I'm giving them a fake name. My brother's name is Sunny Beach. And the other question I always have to answer is I do not have a sister named Sandy, but I did have a dog named Sandy one time, and my brother did name his kids Shelly and River, so the tradition continues. I started playing Ultimate when I was 19 years old, so I've been playing for more than 25 years now. I still play. I played a lot of different, from co-ed to play a lot of the beach. I played in Europe for a while. Played on Revolver for 5 years and retired in 2010 after Prague, after the World Championships. Just really enjoyed, I love playing. One of the things I take away from playing is, and something that gives me a lot of joy, is throwing. There's so many different parts of Ultimate that I worked hard to try to get better at, but throwing is one of those things where I know I put in my 10,000 hours. I love it. And what's been awesome when I launched Ultimate Impact, which we work as a youth development organization, so we're using the sport of Ultimate Frisbee to provide confidence, conflict resolution skills, teamwork, team building, and just getting kids to be active. in really tough communities here in San Francisco. And so one of the things I've gotten to see is like not only to teach this sport that I've loved so much, but to teach a specific skill that I've loved very much, which is throwing. And so Jude invited me to come in and teach throwing skills. How do we teach not only ultimate in general, but specific micro skills, which I think are really, really important. I think sometimes we overlook the micro skills, especially with working with kids. And so what on a weekly basis, our team, we coach over 240 kids a week. And on a yearly basis, we coach over 1,000 kids. So one of the classes that I teach is a group of, and you can imagine, 25 second graders, which is incredibly chaotic. And how do you take that chaos? How do you thrive in that chaos? And how do you have the kids walk away with the skills that you want them to have in order to love this sport? So I'll walk through some of this micro skills. So I want you to walk away with some tools on how to not only teach throwing, how to build the love for throwing, and to do it on a micro level. Like you could teach one youth, or also you could teach a big group. So one of the things I started thinking through when I wanted to look at the basics of how to teach throwing is I think teaching youth is very similar to teaching adults, but you have to teach it in a different way. And one of the things that I've seen as I've coached adults on throwing is that some adults, when they start throwing, they get into bad habits. So I've looked at a structure of how to walk through the basics of teaching good throwing to adults. And some of the really most important things that I think in terms of a framework is confidence and fun. It has to be fun. If your buddy or you're teaching your sister or brother or your kid how to throw, if it's not fun, they're not going to do it. So confidence and fun is really important. Other thing that I think is really important is balance. And I'll walk through how to teach these skills in just a minute, but balance. So sometimes you'll see a player has played for 10 plus years. They get out and they've built such poor mechanics that they're so off balance when they go to pivot, or they can't get out of their pivot. So they'll lunge super far to make a backhand throw, and then not be able to get back to their forehand. And it really limits how far they can go in throwing. So balance is so key. So when I look at teaching adults who maybe fallen into some bad mechanics, I talk about footwork first. I talk about balance first. And they're like, what? That's not my handle. That's not how I hold the Frisbee. It has nothing to do with holding the Frisbee. It's about, can you put yourself and your body in the position to throw correctly? So balance is really important. I talked about mechanics. I think balance and good mechanics are separate. Balance you can do without the Frisbee. You can practice your pivots without even having a Frisbee in your hand. Where mechanics are the micro skills on, are you holding it correctly? Do you have a really good grip? Can you transfer the disc back and forth from as you pivot through? I think that all those can you make really good crisp fakes? We've all seen people who fake tossing it up in the air. That makes absolutely no sense. A crisp fake always has to look like a real throw, or else you might as well not do it. So all these things are really basic mechanics that I try to teach when I teach adult throwing. Another really key component that goes back to balance is one of the things that adults really forget sometimes is footwork. Can we improve our footwork? Can we do footwork drills? How do we make sure our feet are positioned in the right way? All those micro things translate into really good throws. Another thing I think gets more on the emotional side for adults is baby steps. Oftentimes we think, and this connects to my last point, we think that I pick up the Frisbee, I automatically, and I see this a lot in the high level play these days, I automatically want to throw a 50-yard huck, right? Or I automatically want to know how to throw an inside out because I've seen it on TV. I've seen Ashlyn Joy make a shoulder fake. I automatically want to do that. And I think that good throwing needs to take time and needs to take practice. So I really try to encourage adults to take baby steps. Can I today throw a flat forehand? Can I put a little bit of arc on it today with the hope of getting somewhere in the future? And that comes to my last goal. It's really important, I think, to set clear goals for yourself when you're throwing, and set clear goals for when you're teaching somebody, to say, okay, 6 months from now, can you throw an inside out backhand? That's all. And for the next 6 months, that's what you practice. That's the primary thing. And I think oftentimes we think we're going to get to that last goal without doing all the other things. And we don't really have a clear last goal. And so like our throwing never improves. We'll try to throw all, I look at it as like all 7 throws, inside, outside, both sides, outside, inside, both, straight both, and hammer both. Those are the 7 throws I think are the most important. And if we don't have clear goals on each of those, or don't know how we're going to progress them, or don't have a desire to progress them in any way, we won't advance. And so, or we'll get stuck on things and not be able to become the thrower we possibly could be. So those 5 things: confidence / fun, balance, good mechanics, baby steps, and setting clear goals are things that I look through in teaching adults. And so how does that translate to youth, right? And like, how do we use those same similar goals for youth? I think they're definitely very connected, but I think you have to shuffle them a little bit with youth, and you have to use different language. And so I had seen, so some of the pitfalls I've seen coaches get into with teaching youth is they think they want to make it fun for kids. Like they really want kids to love it. So they get out there, and Jude, you teach youth all the time. They want to get out there and they want it. Like the big key to getting a kid to love something, first of all, kids really want to connect with adults. That's like, they really want to get out there. They want to throw in an adult. But if you're coaching 25 kids, how are you going to make a connection and throw with each kid? So you have to give, like, they want to have fun. They want to like the getting a kid to have fun and build confidence is the biggest key to having them continue. But so an adult will say, just make it fly, right? Just make it fly. Take this thing, make it fly. So what happens? I've seen this so many times. You have the kids who are natural athletes, right? They'll get out there. They'll have an idea how to make it fly. They'll watch you do it and they'll be like, boom, make it fly. And what you'll start to see is if you don't give the kids clear guidelines and the structure needed, you'll see the kids who are natural athletes like this, and the kids who don't know how to make it fly, they'll get discouraged. Discouragement will eventually turn into disinterest, right? And so the key is to give the kids like an ubiquitous, a very level, uniform structure to where the kids who are natural athletes and the kids who maybe have never played a sport before can advance at the same rate. And I think oftentimes as adults, we don't give kids enough expectations. We don't give kids enough structure. You can still do both and still have fun. And so that's really the key part of my talk today is what is that structure and how do you still make it fun? So moving on to where I think are the key components, and I'll go through the 5 things. And I always want to say that confidence and fun is kind of like sandwiches everything. It's intertwined with everything. You have to, as an adult, bring the fun, and you have to really look at the key building steps to confidence. And that first smile that you get after a good throw from a kid is like the biggest reward you can ever get. You see a kid, you give them the structure, you get them excited, and they make that throw, and they know. You don't have to tell them. You do, and you should reinforce it and say, that's a great throw. But that smile you see, that confidence builder, that is the reward you're looking for. And the way you do it is by giving them the right structure. And so I go back to, I break it down for kids, and I'll go into the living room because you'll be able to see me a little bit better. But I'm going to give you the structure. I break it down the same thing: balance and good mechanics. So I'm going to combine them together. The baby steps, the setting clear goals, and the confidence and having fun. So I'm going to bring you to my living room where I can actually walk you through what it looks like for first training. And this is as if I'm teaching the 25 kids. So imagine chaos. Sometimes we're in a cafeteria, sometimes we're in a gym, sometimes we're outside. Kids are having trouble waiting in line. Kids are having trouble, like it's challenging, but we can thrive in that challenge. And it's a lot easier one-on-one, but oftentimes when you're a coach, you don't have that opportunity. So I'm gonna bring you into the living room. All right, so some of the key components I think through is I always start with the backhand. I do not think we should delay the development of a forehand in lieu of backhand, but I think the backhand is the easiest thing for a kid to comprehend. It's just grabbing the Frisbee. And that's what I say, is just grab the Frisbee, try to keep it in line with the arm, right? So you'll see sometimes kids hold it like this, or like they'll grab it in the weirdest ways, or I say just grab it, hold it up, grab it, keep it in line with your arm, right? It should be in line with your arm, and you should have a tight grip. I always encourage, so you can teach with the arias, we teach with Discraft. You can also teach with the Discraft micros. And there's a big movement, the micros are rubber, so there's less chance of one of our youth getting hit in the face and causing some damage or pain or injury. But I still teach with the large, even the small kids with big Frisbees. It's so awesome to see this tiny kid and the Frisbee's half their size. I feel like they advance quicker. And so I say backhand, grab it. And so the easy steps are grab the disc. I say feet shoulder width apart. Follow me. This is really important. So feet shoulder width apart, facing your target, right? Grab the disc, shoulder width apart. For the backhand, I say what we do is we step across our body. So take the same foot you're throwing with. So if you're right-handed, you're going to throw with your right leg. If you're left-handed, you're going to step with your left leg. So right leg, right arm, step across your body. I say squat, lean, snap your wrist, right? So as you can see, that's the foundation of what a good throw is going to look like in the future. That's the foundation for a nice slow throw. My skill set, one of the things that kept me in the game in my mid-30s, the high level game, is the fact that I was a thrower. I was able to stay back and handle and be a CAG. And the key for me to throwing was always good balance. So that is the foundation for a nice low release backhand right there. So once again, grab the Frisbee, feet shoulder width apart, cross your body, squat, lean, snap your wrist. One of the things I've seen is you'll see kids do that, and that's a terrible habit that lasts for adults too. Adults will grab it and they'll keep their arm in. Same thing with the forehand. By squatting, what I've learned, and leaning, it's impossible. Not impossible, but it's very hard to keep your arm in. So by squatting and leaning and getting yourself in the right position, naturally your arm releases further away from your body. And so that's something I think is really easy for a kid to pick up. It's like, oh, this feels comfortable that way. And you'll see a kid get their first backhand really, really quickly. Sometimes you'll see it in the first, even a kid who's not a natural athlete, you'll see it happen in the first day or two. So maybe even the first few throws. I've seen that before. So that was the backhand. Why don't we come to questions at the end? And I just love to talk through other components of how we work with kids I might not even thought of today. So the forehand, obviously a little bit more challenging, but not impossible to teach kids. And I think sometimes I see coaches wait too long. I think you should teach first or second practice how to throw the forehand. And prepare the kids to say, this is a little bit more challenging, but you can ask them, you're like, would you like a greater challenge today? And kids are like, of course they're going to say yes. Kids love challenges. So same thing as the backhand, specific, clear ways to have good footwork and to make a really consistent throw. So forehand, same thing as the backhand. If you're right-handed, which leg are you going to step with? Right leg. If you're left-handed, left leg. So feet facing forward. Instead of stepping across this time, we're going to step out. So first thing, we're going to grab the Frisbee. So peace sign. Bring your thumb to the party. Bring your fingers together. And I want you to hold the Frisbee in your opposite hand, your non-throwing hand. All right? And I want you to face it towards you. So grab the Frisbee, face it towards me, and I want you to take your fingers along the wall of the Frisbee. So take your fingers along the wall, and I want you to grip it with your thumb. And there's different ways. Some people will hold it like that, but I try to encourage the two fingers along the wall, grip it, and then the other two fingers, I make a sandwich right there. All right? Opposite hand, along the wall, grip it. Okay. So I have the Frisbee. You can walk through and make sure the kids are holding it correctly. Feet facing forward. So what we're going to do, instead of stepping across, we're going to step out, squat, lean, same things. Out, squat, lean, snap your wrist. You can see that's the basics of a nice low release. And you also have the balance that you need to be able to transfer over to the backhand. So you don't have kids like stepping way out. You don't have kids with their arm in, because out here, try it. If you squat, it's almost so uncomfortable. It puts your body in such a crazy position. So if you encourage them to step out, squat, lean, you already start to see the mechanics you need to make a nice good throw. And you have the clearance you need to add in your inside out or your outside in. And that clearance from your body, I think, is where I see most of the breakdowns in poor mechanics, is that people don't clear their body in order to give the arm the flexibility and the movement to make a good throw. So those are the basic skills. And one of the ways I talk to the kids is it's all about positivity. It's all about support. It's all about giving clear goals. And when I say positivity, it's not about false positivity. Kids have a meter, and they know when you're giving them false positivity. It's not about going around and say, oh, you're amazing, when they just threw it into the ground. That's like not a good way to give them feedback. And it's like, you gotta really, it's like the growth mindset. You have to really reward the effort and trying, right? Instead of the results. And so if I go around and let's just say Jimmy, and I'm like, Jimmy, that was you're such a fantastic natural thrower. What's Jimmy going to think when he fails? Jimmy's going to think, oh my goodness, I'm a fantastic thrower. Why am I failing? And Jimmy will pretty quickly become disinterested, because he's thought of himself as a fantastic thrower. So the correct way, the way I talk to kids is like, Jimmy, I really appreciate how hard you're working on this. I can see if you continue to work hard on this, you're doing a great job putting in that effort. And Jimmy will work harder at it because he sees that as the clear goal. And so those are that growth mindset, and giving the kids the room to continue to grow, I've seen as like a really, really key component. And as I mentioned, like the confidence and the energy are just so critical, to where not only do I need to bring my energy, I need to make sure that like the kids are getting the like keeping the energy high. And there's tricks to do that. You got to do the positive feedback, like I mentioned earlier. You can do the Q&A with kids, which is really important. Like I said, you raise your right hand. Which foot am I stepping with? Right leg. Like the kids, they will key into that, and they'll start to understand and develop their own process. And like having that processing, having those clear guidelines are really important. So that's the overall overarching of ways I teach, and I've seen it work. Some of our kids, while you might not see them in the game for many, many, many years, I mean, we're just teaching third graders now. You might not see them at the highest level in 10 years. We have hundreds of kids that I consider can throw both forehand and backhand under the age of 11, which is pretty awesome. And most importantly for me is they love the sport, and they love having that confidence connected to something that's important to them. So thank you. What questions do I have? Oh, okay. So this is
Hey,
oh,
that's me.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you. It's Strat, right?
Yeah.
Strat, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Cues for teaching flat throws. Okay. So can you give me a little bit of better example? Are you just in the beginning, instead of having it go all crazy, right?
Yeah, with younger players, what specific short cues you use to get them to a flat throw?
Okay. Are we talking about forehand or backhand?
Either side. We can use forehand as an example.
Yeah, I think they're slightly different, right? I think for the backhand, one of the things I'll say, backhand's obviously a little easier to get flat, right? I think if you follow if you can test it, you can even say like follow the steps that I taught earlier, and you'll see that the backhand is almost naturally going to come out flat, because you have your balance, and the arm movement is almost a natural flat movement, right? And so some of the things there's, first of all, the reasons why they're not coming out flat. First of all, the angle that they're releasing disc, right? Or they're not putting the correct spin on it, or they're releasing it too late. So like the 3, right? So they're not incorrect angle. Maybe it's going like that. They're not putting enough spin on it. It'll wobble, or they're releasing it too late, and their arm throwing angle is already past the flat angle, and it'll curve to the right. And so there's the three, I would address like what are the reasons for each of those three, and then make the micro adjustment. So what I would say to a group is, one thing is to have the top of the frisbee be flat, right? So like I will say to the group, as you come through, before you snap your wrist, make sure this frisbee is flat, both this way and this way, almost as if it's on a table. I've heard, like we've talked about that, as if it's on a table, coming off a table. Or I will just say, like, I'll just give them an example, and I'll even make a mistake showing them how, like, oh, look, this is what happens if you do this. And it goes, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. The kids, you could see it process. Like, I don't want to do it that way. And I'll talk to them about, a lot of it is about based on grip. It's like it's either curving for one of the three reasons, and a lot of that is because they'll either hold on to it. Most of the time it's too lightly and not with a nice tight grip. And sometimes I'll go around and try to pull it out of their hand and say, okay, I want you to try to pull it out of my hand. And like they'll, like, once they see that, okay, I really have to hold on to this thing, you'll see their improvement. So forehand is different though. Forehand, even for adults, like, to get it flat is a big challenge for some adults. And what I try to say is, as far as, I'm not in my living room anymore, but it's easier for me to explain. So the big key is most of the natural movement plus the spin of the frisbee is going to obviously take it to the curved left, right? It's a natural outside in with a forehand. What I try to adjust for kids is to have them just drop the back edge. Always, if the kid's having trouble curving, it's forehand starting out is rarely ever going to go that way, rarely ever. So it's always going to curve that way. Just drop the frisbee, and that will overcompensate to the point that they can see it flatten out for themselves. Does that make sense? And forehand rarely falls into the same problems as backhand of too late or too early. I don't think that it's usually based on just the natural movements of the frisbee going to the left. So great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I add something to that I've done?
Love to.
So that I talk about the imagery of hot soup. So the idea is that there's a hot bowl of soup on the top of the disc, and on the forehand, like the key is you don't want to spill that hot soup on yourself. So flat at least, and maybe you'll even a little bit to the outside. So at least if you're going to spill it on the forehand, you're going to spill it that way, right? Because quite often what I see with the first few tries, they're like, it's especially kids who might have played a ball sport. It's a lot of this because it starts to feel more like a natural motion to them. So I talk about hot soup, get it nice and flat so you don't spill that soup on yourself because you don't want to scald yourself. And I don't have to use it every time, but there's inevitably 2 or 3 kids who are just blading everything, right? Or coming like that. And I'm like, hey, and then the nice thing about for that is I just have a cue, a verbal cue that I can just say. I'm like, hey, Sarah, hot soup. And then it's just a little reminder.
Great. I'm going to steal the soup. I like it. That's a good one. I think going on, like, I think one of the important things that we don't think through is getting a kid, especially a younger kid, to the place to where their throws are advancing pretty quickly. It's hard work. You as a coach have to, or a parent, have to continue to use all those same frameworks that I talked about, combined with the positive feedback, and you have to you have to continue with it. It's not just the first time. It's like it's that continual teaching and continual coaching. So one of the things I'll see as a youth starts to feel comfortable and you see they're advancing, give them greater challenges, get them to take that next baby step, or get them to set that micro goal into the future. Like, one of the things I love to teach our kids, the low release throws. Like, we have some 12 and 13-year-olds that can throw this far off the ground. And it's all based on, okay, you're doing such a great job. Can I give you another challenge? You're doing a great job doing that throw right now. Would you like another challenge? And the kids are like, yeah, of course I want a challenge. And so I think also another thing we do is, as we layer on those challenges, we start adding a mark to it, even for our younger kids, way before one would expect them to be ready. And it's got to be a mark that, is manageable for a kid. It could just be an adult just standing there. But they start to conceptualize, why am I stepping out? Because it makes absolutely no sense when they start. Is like, like we're teaching them, I'm trying to teach them the framework for years from now. And once they start to see is like, oh, adults standing in front of me with their hands out, that makes sense. I think you can start to get them to progress faster. So. Zach, what's up? I haven't seen Zach. How's it going, man? Old friends from San Francisco many years ago.
Sorry, I'm late joining this.
That's okay. You missed everything.
That's all right. I wanted to jump in if I could for even a part of it.
Awesome. So any other questions? This is obviously something I love. I love throwing, and I love teaching throwing, and I obviously love coaching.
Hi, this is Scott. I could throw something out.
Yeah, Scott, how's it going?
Hey, groovy. I have two audiences when I'm trying to coach. I do learn to play, which is the children, 7 to 11, but then I also do adult learn to play. So you bring up something that's interesting to me, this idea of the students with the natural ability versus, maybe those who aren't. Do you have any tips, guidance on when you're setting up drills for them and you're pairing them up? It's really easy to let the natural ability kids pair up and the not so natural pair up. And, I struggle, I don't know if I struggle, but I'm always interested in, when's a good time to mix it up a bit more? And, what do you look for there?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I think you add in the layer of, it's complicated. I'll give you some tips. I don't have all the answers, to be completely honest. It's something we always work through. I think, we're often seeing kids sometimes right before lunch, or kids maybe not even eating that day. And it's obviously another layer of how do you avoid meltdowns? And sometimes we take the easier route of just letting the kids pair with who they want to pair with. And sometimes we'll kind of, as the coaches, you want to see the development, because there's development on both sides. If the kids pair up from a youth that might be playing for the first time with a youth who hasn't, and so there's a dual development, right? And so how do you get those groups as mixed up as possible, but also enable the two kids who might have played for a long or more experienced or more natural athletes to have the chance to advance together, right? And so I think you gotta look at that angle. It's okay to let the two kids throw together. But it's great for development of all the kids. And so you don't want it to naturally be okay, now you're the teacher, but the kid will inherently see that's more experienced or advancing at a different rate is oh, you can encourage them. Would you all work together on these throws? You can provide that guidance to say, I want y'all to work as a team. You can set team goals for them. I want to see if you can do 10 throws together. And inherently, they're both going to work together on that. So we do that. Another thing that I think is really important is that when you allow the kids, and I'll teach you a couple different things that we try and work with, and we kind of use all the tools depending on where the kids are that day. But so I will oftentimes take the easier route, but the harder route as a coach, and I'll explain what I mean. I'll be okay, choose your partner. That's all. I will always say choose your partner. Not always, but a lot of times. And then what that enables me to do is also spend more time with the kids that need more development as a coach. Because if I'm coaching 25 kids, they're not going to get a lot of one-on-one time. I just know that. But it'll enable me, so inevitably, the kids who are more experienced, I can come over and give micro adjustments to say, okay, now I want you to try this. And I can go to the kids who need more time and stay with them and I can advance them closer to the kids who are more experienced quicker, because I'm able to stand there and be really work on their footwork and really work on the throwing. And that's management of a big class. So it's a little bit different if you have 10 kids, right? It's right. But it's a trick that I use that allows me, and I feel if I have that one-on-one time, I can advance a kid a lot faster. And so I wouldn't discourage that. And another trick, so one of our coaches, he's the best youth development specialist I've ever seen, and we're very, very fortunate to have him on our team. He'll have the kids line up across their partner, and then they have no idea how he's going to pair them now. Like some days he'll let them throw together. Some days you're like, okay, you're throwing with the kid on the opposite end. And so like he's prepared them from the start that their partners are going to be completely random. And so he sets that expectation from like the first class. And so you can have them line up against their partner. Some days you might get your partner or your best friend, and some days you might not. And so that's a trick. Another trick is like, is that line up, let them throw with their partner for a while, and then have them shift one.
That's the one I like. I mean, or for what, I mean, that's like the only one in my tool bag is the one you just said. So I appreciate hearing these other ones, but
Yeah.
I like the idea of, let them pair up initially the way they want, but then say, okay, you've done 10 throws, this side, just step right, move right one and pick up, now you have a new partner.
And I think just in terms of the youth development angle, one of the really key things as a coach, and it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. As an adult, I'm not a parent, but I coach enough kids to just realize how challenging it is to be a parent. Is you have to be consistent. You have to be the one that sets the framework. And so, if scenario happens all the time, like I pair them up, pair the kids up, or let them throw with their buddy or whatever, and then they like throw for 3 or 4 minutes, everything's going fine, and then you try to shift and you have meltdowns. Happens. As an adult, there are tracks you can take. One of the tracks I see is like really erodes your own status as a coach and as an adult, is that the kid just has a meltdown. You're like, okay, look, fine, whatever. Just keep throwing with your friend. Keep it. That's a track that is a very easy track to take. I think if you want to see the development as a team and the development of the youth, is to say, one of the things I'll say is like, okay, I'm going to give you a couple options here. One, you can take a break and go sit down and not participate in the throwing. Or you can throw with this new partner. Both are totally fine. If you feel like, and inevitably the kid really wants to play and they're like, okay. It's like, you have to be consistent that that's your decision, and like you're giving them the tools to like work their way out of that decision. But the melting down, getting their way is it's going to erode your ability as a coach in the future. And the rest of the class will see it, that's the way to get their way. And so I think it's really important as a coach and adult, especially with younger kids, especially with like 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds. But it works throughout the whole age range, is to be consistent and to kind of stand your ground, but in a really positive way. It's not to be like, now you're in trouble. It's like, okay, look, if you want, it's fine, but here's your choices. So that's some tips that I use. Any other questions? Zach, it's so good to see you, man. I haven't seen Zach in 20 years.
10. We'll go 10.
10. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I had a question. I have talking about snap, especially in the forehand side. What I have a cue that I use that is, it's fun, but it's getting a little old, and I'm always looking for new things. So just kind of like, how do you talk, especially on the forehand side? So many kids want to wave it around as opposed to snapping.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what kind of cues do you use to sort of reinforce what that looks like or feels like?
Yeah, so I think going back to the micro skill before that, what I'll try to, it's really hard. I'm not gonna lie, teaching snap is hard. I think the micro cues that I use is just the grip. First of all, the grip's got to be really important, and it remind kids that it's all in their wrist and not in their arm. So I like just reminding kids it's not an arm movement, it's a wrist movement. And I show them, it's like, hold it out there, just show them just what it looks like with me just snapping it, like without even moving my arm. And then so reinforcing this is a wrist movement, not an arm movement. The backhand is also a wrist movement connected to the arm. And so and of course you use your arm in the forehand, there's no doubt, but like they'll see that like even with the minimum effort, they will get this. And I tell them the most important thing is to get that thing spinning. And the way you get that spinning is by using your wrist, and to hold on to it fairly tight. And so like those are the micro skills before I'll teach the snap. Sometimes I like, like inevitably we've all snapped the towel. I'll talk to them about snapping a towel, right? Have you ever snapped the towel? Yes, so that's the movement. That's the same movement that you want to use. I always also remind them that it's coming off of this finger, the middle finger. This is where, like, this is the final point of contact when you throw a forehand, and try to make sure you feel it with that finger. And like those micro skills, they add up to the spin. So,
Jude, I used to have a friend who would describe it as a feeling of having a machete cutting through a watermelon. Now, I've never cut a watermelon with a machete, but for some reason that's really worked, like people visualizing what it might feel like to cut a watermelon with a machete.
yeah, the
Yeah.
challenge, yep. Yeah.
One thing, the thing that I've used, and it's worked pretty well, but like I said, I'm a little tired of saying it. I just say, like, and it works. It doesn't work well in a group, but if I'm kind of working one-on-one, is I'll say something like, what I say is like, imagine what's something that's super gross that's on your finger. Imagine something really gross, and then inevitably they're like boogers or poop, right? And I say, like, you wouldn't just wave it around showing everybody. You'd want to get it off your fingers, right? So it'd be a snap. And waving it around isn't going to get that off. And so think about what it's going to take to get that booger off your finger. But I'm a little tired of talking about boogers, honestly. So I love the idea of like breaking it down into sort of micro.
And I think and I think you also have to, Jude, I like that. I'm gonna use that and see how that works too. I think it sounds great. And gross, which is totally fine. I think what's key too is like you have different styles of learners. We all talk about that. Some people are visual learners. Some people like will listen, and some people like are audio learners. I don't know the different technical terms, but it's so true. I think for what's really important is to model the throw. So you have to practice what you're teaching as a coach. You don't have to be a great thrower, but you have to at least have the right form. And kids will be like, oh, that's how you're doing it. That's how you're supposed to do it. And so remembering and being consistent with how you're throwing and modeling it is really important. And I've had several of our youth, as they start to advance, they see their natural role is to help teach too, which that's okay. It doesn't really create that. I've seen it doesn't really create that much of a power dynamic in the class. Is if you have a youth that can go around and help the other kids hold it, and like they love that. Other kids love to have another kid help them. It's like, oh, let me, like, Paolo, this one kid that we have is just an amazing thrower at 11, and like I'll be like, Paolo, can you help me just go over and work with Alyssa to work on forehand, or Paolo, can you and it's like it helps, and to see a youth helping another youth, that peer-to-peer learning is really, really powerful. So don't be afraid as kids get better to use them too, because sometimes that's the only tools I have. It's like there's so many kids. I was like, all right, I'm going to use everything I have to get this functioning well. And so, things that I've seen that work well. So any other questions? So I know, Jude, we took pretty much all the time that I think we only had a half hour scheduled originally, but it's really been awesome sharing something I love. And I know we all love to play, and just like the micro skills part of it are, like, to me, are really special. And, like I said, you get excited about it, your kids will get excited about it, but try to stay out of some of the traps we discussed earlier, and give the kids the framework they need for success.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Sure.
So let's say you're introducing sport for the first time to a new group. Kind of what will be maybe like the sequencing, which do maybe like give introduction to yourself, introduction to the sport, kind of a basic rundown of the rules, and then do you then like go into demonstration of the throws, or kind of at what point in introducing it to a new group of people does the throwing come in?
So what's awesome, Desmond, that is a great question. The work we do with Ultimate Impact, we're basically introducing Ultimate to a community that hasn't played before. And so my last few years has been doing nothing but that. And I think what's really important is you connect it to other sports, first of all, or connect to other experiences. So I'll say, I play Ultimate Frisbee, been playing whatever. I'm here to share with you this sport that I love. So first of all, bring it like how much you love it, how important it is, how much fun it is. It's a sport that I just really love, and I'm here to share something with you that's special to me. And I'll also say, how many of you have played soccer before? How many of you have played basketball? How many have played whatever, right? In the States, it's like football and baseball or basketball. And I'll say, ultimate is a sport that other skills from other sports translate into ultimate frisbee, and the things that we're going to teach you in ultimate is going to translate back to the other sports. So suppose you play, you play ultimate, it will make you better at soccer. It will make you a better basketball player. And so like I'll introduce it that way, as to where they will see it as like, oh, this isn't something that's going to compete with this other sport that I love. It's something that can make me better. And you're like, oh, if you're a great soccer player, ultimate combines a lot of those skills that you know in soccer with other things. And so that's how I first set it up, right? And then secondly, what I think the wow moment is, I'll select a couple of volunteers from the group, and I'm like, look, I'm going to show you like 3 basic throws that we're going to teach you. There are more, and I'll teach you those as we go. But I'm going to teach you 3 basic throws in ultimate. It's called the forehand, the backhand, and the hammer. Okay. And I'll select 3 volunteers. We're like, all right, I want you to go. And like, I'm a thrower, so like that is like, all right, I'm just gonna wow them. But I'll be like, okay, I want you to go, 25 meters away. And then you turn around to the kids, you're like, y'all think I'm gonna be able to make it to them? Like almost off the bat. And the kids are like, no, yes, no, and you're like, okay. And so you show them, you wow them a little bit, right? You don't have to be an amazing thrower to do this. As an adult, you're gonna wow them just like getting it somewhere. But you're like, okay, 25-meter throw, and then you have like somebody 50 meters. You're like, okay, you think I can do that? Whatever your limit is, and you can wow the kids, and then they start to see it's actually it takes skill to do it, right? And they realize that like, oh my goodness, that's awesome. So that wow moment is when you start to really connect them and get them to pay attention during the class. I've not done that wow moment, and you just kind of lose them, right? So I'll do a hammer. I have a forehand or backhand. And then I'll just like launch one to the farthest way I can throw. And like you built that credibility for yourself, and you built that credibility for our sport. And so that is a really, really important way to start, in my opinion. So I'll do my intro, kind of talk through it, be really excited about it, why it's important to me. And then I try to bring them to like, this is real, and I'm gonna teach you something that's gonna be really fun that you can wow people in the future with. Does that help?
Yeah, no, sounds good.
Yeah.
I really like the wow demonstration, in a sense, kind of giving a visual cue as to what this could look like something they can actually put themselves and take care. Maybe one day I could do that. So okay, then you go through the process.
Yeah, and you can wrap it back. You're like, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's like, but it's going to take time. But they've already heard that with you saying, you've been playing what, 6, 7 years now? How long did you say you've been playing? I don't think
I've been playing now since 2015, so 5 years.
Okay, 5 years. Like they'll see like, wow, he's been playing for 5 years, right? And like that's going to take time. They can, like, I think sometimes we underestimate how perceptive kids are, and like they get it, like they know. But I think it's important to like, set those like goals up for them in the future. Any other questions? That was a good. Michael, nice to see you. Thanks for coming over from YouTube.
Hi, Rocky.
Hey, how's it going?
I actually do have a kind of a question. And honestly, I've been kind of in and out trying to pull this up, so it may have been addressed already. Up here in Seattle, we start them. We start them in 3rd grade, right? So we start 9-year-olds throwing frisbees, and so I've had quite a bit of opportunity to teach 9-year-olds and younger kids how to throw, and so kind of from my background, I know that as humans we develop our coordination and our core strengths from the center of our body out to the ends of our limbs. It's a thing we do called cephalocaudal development. So I'm wondering, some of the things that I focus on is focusing kids. So kids who are that young, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, they have a hard time. coordinating their wrists and their elbows with their arms. And so do you have any modalities that we could, because we can kind of help them focus, like when you started talking about balance, about helping younger kids with throwing a frisbee by foot, but helping like with some things that they can figure out about from the base of their body, keeping that in mind.
Yeah, no, I go back to like the key component of what we talked about, and I think that like the balance, but you have to give them the skill. So I still go back to, it's like almost impossible to not clear your arm. I think of your arm clearing your body, right? Your power is going to come out of your core, and your power is going to come out of your hips, and your power is going to come out of your shoulders, and none of that can work if your arm is so tight to your body. So allowing your arm to clear your body by having the right footwork. Right, so that I go back to that footwork. I think getting your feet facing the right direction and having your feet, when you place your pivot, in a spot that can pivot you back, but also have you balance to throw your throw. So to like you said, it's like I think it almost becomes natural. It's a natural feeling if you're doing the right, like those footwork components that I talked about earlier. So like I think we fail to do that because I think sometimes as an adult, we underestimate kids. Like I go back to like, do not underestimate how much kids can learn, and set expectations based on this. How like, set the ceiling, not the ceiling, but set the goals, like the expectations higher than you would think, because kids can get there, but you have to support them, give them the tools along the way, right? And so, and I just go back to like footwork, core, like clearing your arm. If you think about like how do you clear your arm from your body, like the core part of your body, and still have your power, if you think about it that way and you can verbalize that to youth, I have the ways, like I talked earlier, you'll see success. I guarantee it.
Okay. One thing that I've noticed just is that even with really, really, really young kids over the years, is that personally I have found that it's easier to teach even little kids a forehand than a backhand. I have taught phenomenally young kids, and it's kind of almost paradoxical, because later on sometimes it's harder for them to learn a backhand or get better at a backhand. But I've seen a lot of kids who throw really, really, really good forehands as little tiny people.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. I had a kid, like he was just one of our kids. He was throwing, he's like maybe seven. His older brother were playing, and I was watching. I said I try to use the big frisbees because I feel like they advance faster. But he was like throwing it and like 30 or 40 yards, like this tiny little kid. And I'm like, Josh, like Jethro, can you show me how are you holding it? And like, because his hands were so small, like he could barely get his. So he had figured out that if he had the motion, like he was like a 4-finger forehand and just launching it. And so basically, but he was following all the mechanics that we talked earlier, right? Like the grip is one thing is easy to adjust as he got older. I was like, okay, Jethro, now I want you to try to do it 2 fingers instead of 4. But the fact that he was stepping out balanced, that same thing I taught his older brothers, he was doing, and he was able to clear his body and get the snap on it he needed. And so, yeah, same thing. Just give him the framework, give him the core, have him be balanced, and I think you'll see the results. So I know, Jude, we're nearing the end. I really appreciate everyone, staying with us, and it's awesome to get to talk about something I love. So thank you. Jude, you're on mute right now.
Those are like, it's my most common phrase these days. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is going to be sort of standard issue training now for I know Disc Northwest coaches. I'm going to make this widely available. I hope other orgs do the same. Stuff is really good. I know it's one of those things that can feel very daunting when you're trying to introduce new coaches or bring new coaches into the field, like especially maybe folks who've been throwing a long time and they haven't really broken it down into the component parts anymore. They're just like, you just step out and throw it because that's all they do. So yeah, this stuff's really, really great. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop streaming live and recording, but
Great.
if you're comfortable sticking around and answering questions, or just
I have
chatting.
let's say